What was your "oh crap my life is over my parents are gonna kill me" moment you had as a child teen? I put my cheap gel pens in a microwave when I was 11 because they wouldn't work and my teacher told me that it's because the ink has frozen. Let's say I had to work extra that summer so I could get a new microwave. For a month I kept taking the internet cord from my parents' room and running it to the living room, plugging it in the TV box. I was washing the dishes when my dad started reading out the P titles on the bill. Every single day my mom told me to be careful near the frozen pond next to our house. One day enough snow melted in order for my friends and I to play soccer in the field next to the pond. As you can guess, at one point the ball ended up dead center in the middle of the pond on the ice. My child brain figured if I could throw a stick on the ice, it was safe to walk on. So after making sure the ice was stable by throwing not one but 2 sticks, I started my walk to get the ball. It was like a scene from a movie. I reached the center and the second I picked up the ball and attempted to turn around I fell straight through the ice and went under. I had to break the ice the entire way back to shore and had my clothes dried at a friend's house a few blocks away. By the time I got there I thought I was on my deathbed, but I could never tell my mom I was dumb enough to go out there or she would have probably killed me. I'm now 26 and have still never told my parents I did that, lol. This story takes place in the mid-90s. I was 16, skipping school out fricking around in my car with friends. Took a turn too fast and put the car in a ditch. We got the car out of the ditch with the help of a passerby. Not a scratch on it by some fricking miracle. Get home and dad asks so how was school in a way that told me he knew full well I wasn't at school. If there is one thing my father instilled in me, it is this: no matter how bad you frick up, lying about it will only make it worse. Own up. Take your punishment and don't do it again. So I told him exactly what happened. He couldn't really take the car away. I'd purchased it from him for full trade-in value out of money I'd saved from working at a pizza joint. But he found other ways to make my life a living heck for a few months after that. Come to find out, the good Samaritan who helped us out of the ditch was a co-worker of my dad who recognized the car and had called dad to let him know about my adventures. Haha, I saw a family member at a red light once when I was skipping school. He asked me why I wasn't in school and I said, "You never saw me," and drove away. He never told my parents. Thanks, Leo. I was 17. Drove my girlfriend home from school. We ended up in the shower together. Just as we turned off the water and she was stepping out, we hear her dad open the front door of the house. Of course my truck is in the driveway so he knows I'm there, but I'm nowhere else in the house obviously. My short life flashed before my eyes. He came stomping down the hallway and banged on the bathroom door. My girlfriend, wrapped in a towel, answered the door and lied her butt off. Spanks is down the street at one of our friend's house. I told him I'd call when I was out of the shower. Meanwhile, I'm standing frozen and shriveled in the shower behind the curtain preparing to meet the hereafter. Married that girl. Been together 26 years. When I was 12, we were visiting my mom's family for Christmas and staying at my aunt's house like we usually did. Behind her house was a creek that ran through most of the neighborhood. This particular year, it had been really cold and there was snow at least 6 inches deep in most places. I was playing out in the snow and looked back at the creek and saw some really weird icicles that I wanted to get a closer look at. I crossed a fallen log to get to the opposite side of the creek, facing the back of my aunt's house, and walked along the bank looking at the ice. Basically the creek was flowing and not frozen, but there was a shelf that had frozen above it and the ice hanging from it had formed into teardrop shapes instead of the typical spikes I was used to seeing. As I walked, I neglected to see a patch of ice on the bank in front of me and stepped on it with my full weight. I slipped and slid fully into the creek, which was way deeper than I had anticipated. I was wearing a winter coat, jeans, and insulated boots, all of which became incredibly heavy when they got wet. I was up to my armpits, trying desperately to stay afloat in freezing cold water and heavy clothes. My only thought was, my mom is going to be so pissed. Obviously I survived that incident. I pulled myself out, stumbled up the bank to a building that I thought was a Rimka and turned out to actually be a fire station. They called my mom. She came to get me. No harm, no foul, and I was not in any trouble. Although my entire family still mocks me and asks if I'd like to go for a swim every Christmas. When I was 6, I spilled grape juice on the tan carpet in the living room. I put a pillow over it, laid on the pillow, and vowed that I would stay there the rest of my life so my parents would never find out. I lasted about 45 minutes. My mom was more upset that I got grape juice on the pillow, rather than the carpet. When I was 28 I spilled a gallon of house paint on my basement carpet. We put a rug over it. You had a solid plan. When I came home to tell them that my girlfriend was pregnant for Thanksgiving of my freshman year of college. Turkey wasn't the only thing stuffed that year. Getting pulled over by 3 police cars for doing 70 in a 45. My dad happened to call as I was talking with the officers. They asked to speak with him. After a few minutes they handed the phone back and said, "You better go home. That is going to be worse than the ticket we are giving you." That was a whole lot of yelling at home. So we live in a 2-story colonial. My parents are away on vacation. I'm in the yard and tossing a baseball up in the air and catching it, just a 9-year-old entertaining myself. I think to myself, hey, let's loft it onto the first split level roof and then it'll roll off and I'll catch it. Second toss, crash, shatter sister's window. Grandma was babysitting. Grandma reported. I was smoked. I skipped school by leaving the house. Climbing on the garage and waiting for my mum to leave. I jumped down to let myself in as she drove off and set myself up for a day on my PS1. She then came back as she'd forgotten something and I wanted to die in a hole. The yelling was something to behold. Didn't do that again. That reminds me of my friend. He decided he wanted to skip school. However, his mom stayed home all day. He and our other friend decided to hide under the porch of another friend of ours. They played cards under that porch the entire school day because everyone on the street knew everyone. Personally, that sounds boring and I am glad I went to school. Was driving home early in the morning after a night of playing games at a friend's. I was going too fast on an icy road, lost control of my car and ended up 40 yards into an icy, flooded field, car filled with water. I was 16 and had gotten my license just a couple months earlier. Parents were actually pretty cool about it. The car recovered, but always had a smell after that. It happens. You were a new driver and I imagine most people who drive in icy climates have lost control at least once. If I were them I would have just been happy you weren't hurt. There was a small lizard trapped in our garage under a pile of wood, so I moved some of them so it could get out. I must have accidentally knocked over a larger plank in the process. That landed on my dad's car and went straight through the windshield. Lizard was fine though. Lizard was fine though. Ah, well that's all that matters. One time I snuck out of the house, and when I went to sneak back in the door was locked. We never locked the doors to the house, so I knew I'd been caught. Lived on a farm, so I just went up to the hayloft to sleep the rest of the night. My sister locked me out of the house. She was still inside, so I went around banging on all the doors, and she's ignoring me. I started pounding on her bedroom window, and my hand accidentally goes through the window. Over 10 years later and I still have a tiny scar on my hand. If I was your parents I'd be more mad at the sister. My mom left 14-year-old me and my 8-year-old brother alone at home to run an errand. I don't remember what he did, but he royally pissed me off, and I had a bad temper as a teenager. So, I chucked a cordless phone at his face. He started bleeding everywhere and we both panicked. I had knocked out one of his teeth, so he ran to the bathroom to see which one, bawling the whole time. As it turns out, it was his extra tooth. He was scheduled to have it pulled a few days later. So then, the angry tears turned to grateful tears at avoiding a trip to the dentist. We did still have to call my mom, though, so that she knew why he was suddenly missing bonus tooth. He confirmed that he was glad I knocked it out and she went up. I have to think about this. I was grounded. Edit. This is now one of those stories that we tell because we think it's hilarious. My parents had us each 6/7 years apart, so growing up we had a lot of dumb fights. The younger ones still do. It's his particular brother's birthday today, so he's at my house, and he was proud that this was my response to this particular question. His exact thoughts about the story were after I realized it was the extra tooth. It was freaking amazing. 17 years old, had a party while the parents were out of town. I had to work the next day, but timed it so I would have plenty of time to clean before they got home that evening. came home from work. The sprinklers are on and their car is in the driveway. Driving down my driveway, I was anxiety and fear personified. I walk in the house and my mom tells me, "Your dad had to leave before you got here, otherwise he was afraid of what he might do to you." Jesus Christ almighty. In our single digits, my older brother locked me out of the house while parents were out. I threw a stick at the back door and shattered the storm door glass. Knew I was gonna get a licking, but my bro got the licking instead for locking me out. He was a real jerk to me as a kid, and we are in our 50s now, but he still brings up how guilty he feels for it. That kinda makes up for how much I despised him back then, semicolon. I think we have different definitions on what a stick is if it can break a glass storm door. Parents were away for the weekend. I took my dad's keys and took it for a small drive. I was never allowed to drive unsupervised, didn't have a license or anything. Was a thrill. I came back, parked, left the keys in the same drawer he left them in. Monday arrives. I come back from school and my dad asks me to come look at the car. With a death glare, I had forgot to pull the seat back after adjusting them for my 14-year-old legs. Dang, you almost got away with it. My 14-year-old self would have made a crappy lie about just sitting in car pretend driving it. I thought it was a good idea to play with some candles while having a LOTR marathon. Turns out that was a bad idea because I ended up getting distracted and set the family couch on fire. I frantically put it out and threw a blanket over it. I didn't leave that couch for a week. My parents paid for my mobile phone subscription, got a girlfriend and called a lot more, too much more, raked up a €600 bill. My soul left my body that day. I snuck out and took the car when I was 16 before I had a license to drive at night. I hit a pothole and blew a tire. I rode around on a shredded tire for 2-3 minutes before I drove up on a guy smoking a cigarette in his driveway. He helped me change it. The next morning my parents woke up early and were going to take the car somewhere and the spare was still on. Luckily this was right when the Goodyear or Firestone tires were all blowing out, and I told my parents that it happened earlier in the day before, and I just didn't have a chance to tell them. Getting drunk at the age of 14 at a house party. My mum met me a few minutes walk away. She could hear my ridiculously drunk self the entire walk. I was 10 years old, only pretending to drive a car with my friend in the back seat. I knew not to touch the ignition or the gearbox, so the car is parked on an incline. I lowered the handbrake and the car starts to roll backwards, moving steadily and with increasing momentum towards a concrete wall. Thankfully I knew which one the brake was, so I pressed down on it with all my might and told my friend to get out of the car and call my dad. All the while pressing down on that brake, I thought, yep. Today I either die or my dad kills me. I live to tell the tale. The 5 seconds between my mum catching me smoking and actually speaking back when I was 14. The longest 5 seconds of your life. I was sitting in my back garden with my best friend, and we'd recently acquired an air rifle. So obviously we started shooting it at things in an increasingly destructive manner. Because we were 11, we shook up and banged out a can of Coke and then laughed as it went nuts, spraying its contents everywhere. Then we got a can of deodorant and it was even more ridiculous because it basically went bang but in a relatively harmless way. Then we got a can of shoe polish. Turns out shoe polish is a little bit flammable. A little bit more flammable than you might expect. The explosion set fire to my stepdad's shed. The can itself went straight up like a surface-to-air missile. Armed police arrived shortly afterwards. At the time I lived in reasonably central London, and this was in 1991, which just happened to be slap bang in the middle of the biggest ever spate of IRA terrorist attacks on the city, and a couple of months after some IRA members had driven a motorboat up the Thames and fired mortar shells at the actual fricking Houses of Parliament. The bollocking we got from the police was extreme, but it was nothing compared to the look in my mother's eyes the whole time it was going on. Because my friend and I knew that it was when the police left that things were going to get very bad indeed. The sense of apprehension, even worse than a riot cop carrying a rifle screaming in our faces about how stupid we were. It was horrifying. We were doomed. And so it came to pass. She went absolutely freaking mental. My mother is a mild-mannered person, but not that day. Not that day. It still terrifies me to think of it almost 30 years later. Edit. As pointed out, it was a modified van rather than a boat that the mortar shells were fired from. Chisel. 11-year-old shooting rubbish with an air rifle. Probably innocent kids on a farm in North America. Central London. 1991. Oh, dear. Was texting my brother asking for help with something so that my mom wouldn't get mad. Called her a B in the text. Sent it to my mom. Same here. I don't recommend it. I had just gotten my first ever job at Ace Hardware, and a week in, my buddies hit me up asking if I wanted to head to the beach for next week, and I was like, yeah, of course. So I told my boss at work a family member died and I couldn't come in the next week. So my boss called my dad, who also works for the owner of the company in a different department, and starts telling him, I'm so sorry for your loss, please let me know if I can do anything to help. And my dad was like, what do you mean? What happened? And he ended up telling my boss I lied about the entire thing. I still got the week off and went on the vacation, but the next few days at my job were nerve-wracking to say the least. I didn't put the chicken out the freezer while my mom was pulling up. My mother would wake me up before school and tell me to take the dinner out the freezer before I left, and she'd go to work. I'd tell her, no problem. The problem was I hadn't woken up. Apparently back then I could hold perfectly lucid conversations while still not conscious. We had quite a few improvised dinners on account of me sleeping through my mother's instructions. I was on my period and got it very heavy for the first time and was laying back on our new couch in our new house. The couch was pretty expensive and my parents were really nervous about anyone sitting on it with food, drinks, etc. I got up to go do homework when I noticed that there were about 5 drops of blood stained into the couch, and at that moment I was done with everything. My parents were going to actually kill me. Plus I got blood onto my fav sweet pants. They were mad but knew I was innocent and they got IT fixed. It's perfect now. Home alone, me and my younger bro were smoking in my backyard next to my basement door. One of my buddies was on his way to meet us with more bud and to just chill. I told him to just come straight to the basement when I heard his car pull up. I think you know where this is going. In a span of about 5 seconds. 1. I get a text from him saying he hasn't left his house. 2. I look up to see my dad opening the basement door, my brother holding this wildly elaborate massive bong with negative chance of hiding it. We don't smoke by the house anymore. When I was in 3rd grade I brought my brand new Beyblade to school to show to one of my friends. During PT period I carried it with me in my pocket because there was this stupid rumor about surprise bag checks when children aren't in the classroom. Guy behind me in the line saw it and told the PT teacher. The Beyblade was confiscated. I tried to act cool in front of the other kids but I was crap scared that my parents would find out. After going home I pretended to search for my Beyblade everywhere so that my mom would think that it got lost. My elder brother was in the same school and it scared me even more that someone from my class would tell him about this. Our family moved to a different place and we moved to a different school the following year. So to this day nobody knows. Now I am 21 and this story makes me laugh every time I think about it. Edit. Beyblade not Beyblade. Sorry. I'm gonna tell your mom. Me and a few buddies got arrested for some very foolish and regrettable criminal mischief. We managed to keep it from our parents by getting to the mailbox first to destroy court notices and targeted letters from lawyers. We thought we were in the clear too, until the newspaper article with our names in it came out. I bet that conversation with the parents you would have had still haunts you. Was playing with gasoline and caught my pants on fire. My parents are from Eastern Europe and my dad does not spare the rod. So, there I am with first 3rd degree burns on my left leg and about an hour passed since the initial incident happened before I even thought about telling him. Adrenaline is one heck of compensatory mechanism. I was burned by rubbing alcohol and got 2nd and 3rd degree burns on both legs, my stomach and my arm. I didn't feel any pain for about 10 minutes, and then it hit me with the force of 1000 suns. Adrenaline is frickin' crazy. My parents had just left for vacation. I got pulled over doing 85 in a 45. The cop didn't write me a ticket, but gave me his phone number and told me to have my parents call him by 6 p.m. He told me if he did not get a call, he was going to issue a warrant for my arrest. Mind you, this was before cell phones were very reliable. I left a message with the receptionist at their hotel letting them know they needed to call home as soon as they checked in, and that it was an emergency. The cop told them that there was no way he could write me a ticket that didn't result in me losing my license, and being that I was just a dumb, young kid being dumb, he didn't want to do that. He instructed them to put the fear of God in me, and he would put the matter behind him. Needless to say, it was not my finest moment as a son. It was a warm spring day, we were juniors, and so a bunch us cut school to swim and drink beer at the beach. So I ran into a girl I hardly knew, and after a couple of bottles of beer, I asked her if she wanted to go home with me, since my folks were at work and my siblings were at school. So we went to my house and we had sex. So she's getting dressed in the bathroom, and who should walk in on her but my mother, who had taken a mental health day from work. Funny now, not funny at all to my pious Catholic mom. It took months for everything to calm down. When I was an adult, my father was like, "Why the heck did you have dragged mom into it? Why didn't you check the house first?" But I did it, and in 1962, that was something, and it was a long time before I had sex again. My friend pocket dialed my house phone after he got into a fight at the party we were both at. My parents overheard him asking where I was and if I was still throwing up. Friends proceeded make a plan while my parents still listened. Parents hang up and call back. Friend answers and they ask to talk to me. "Where are you? We're coming to pick you up." When I was bored and threw a tiny firecracker into the toilet. The problem is it was one of those wall-mounted toilets, so the bottom was relatively thin. The first few haven't exploded, the fuse just burned up and that's it. The third one I missed, so it landed on the edge of the toilet. Those few seconds were enough for the second part of the fuse to start, and as it fell in I was expecting it to create a sizable splash, so I got out of the bathroom. As soon as it exploded I felt something wasn't right. I opened the door, and lo and behold, the bottom was totally wrecked, wall and ceiling covered with a mixture of water and gunpowder. My mom was at work and I had about 2-3 more hours to fix it. I called my grandpa, since we were very close, and told him what I did and asked him if he would fix it. Of course, fixing a ceramic toilet is not that simple, so we went to a Home Depot style shop to buy a new one. The first one we got wouldn't fit, so we had to go back again for another one. We got there 15 minutes before closing, exchanged them, removed the broken one, mounted the new one, and I quickly cleaned the bathroom. My mum, who I live with, still has no idea that ever happened. Grandpa told grandma that the drain pipe was leaking, so he came to fix it. My mum, of course, noticed the smell of the ceramics glue, but I told her I accidentally spilled hand sanitizer. We moved out of there. Nobody has ever noticed it. Hopefully they never will. I keep away from firecrackers and my grandpa and I have a new, pretty expensive secret. One time I was with a friend in the yard trying to hit golf balls over the top of the house. Why? I literally have no idea. Ended up whacking one of those puppies into the siding and causing a dent. Also, another time, I hit a tennis ball through one of the garage door windows. I should probably have stopped playing sports in the front yard. You know those massive speakers with those big rubber-like discs where the sound comes out? My dad owned 4 of them in his music room. Yeah, I put like 8 dents into one of the big rubber discs because I liked poking it. I hid under my bed thinking my dad would murder me. My mom and sister had to calm him down before he confronted me. I was 6. I once locked my mum's car keys inside her car while she was at work once. I was opening the boot of the car and I was going to go into the car afterwards. So I threw the keys into the car, shut the boot, and went to open the car door. It was locked. The keys were inside. My mum had to break the back window of the car to get in to retrieve the keys, and had to drive around with a bin bag taped over the window for like a month. Edit. She could have called someone to fix the lock, but she needed to use the car to drive to her next job, and didn't have time to wait for a call out. Also, she probably never considered it anyway. When I was 11 I wanted s'mores and I was home alone. I went out back and made what I thought was a safe little fire surrounded by rocks. Wrong. Ultimately, the embers caught some leaves under my parents' deck on fire and I watched in abject horror as their house went up in the biggest motherfucking flames I'd ever seen. They were loving and supportive after finding out I was alive, but certainly less than thrilled at my idiocy. Ninja always have freaking homeowners insurance, folks, if you own a home. Especially with kids. Particularly with accident prone ones. And no, this was the last catastrophe I caused. Shinobi Ninja, thanks for the silver. I was also on Judge Judy a number of years later. Dad was less than pleased about that too, but that's a tale for another time. Lol. Had my 15 boyfriend, 18, over while my dad wasn't home. Went to a friend's house and got drunk. My boyfriend was drunk, so I put him to sleep in my bed. Went downstairs to clean up the house and fell asleep on the couch in my underwear due to no account. Woke up to my dad standing over me and looking at an empty 26er of vodka on the table. I told him it gets worse. I run upstairs and wake up my BF and tell him my dad is home. He jumps out of bed, runs down the stairs and out the front door. I can't believe I lived to see another day after that. Your boyfriend may have been a Looney Tunes character. When I was 14 and made napalm in the backyard and it exploded and lit the fence on fire in the shed. I broke an old iPod when I was like 5 and I thought it was like thousands of dollars to fix, so I just sat there crying. I was 19, I think, and you would think that is old enough not to have a curfew, or at least have a curfew of midnight or something. Nope, I am a woman and my parents are from the Balkans. I was not supposed to be out after dark, unless I'm with family. This takes place in the US BTW, so I get sick of how strict my parents are and decide to sneak out. My parents always went to bed around 10. I would make sure to be in bed also at the time. Once I was sure they were asleep, I would crawl out my window, carefully make my way across the roof, second story, to the wood pile at the side of our house. It was pretty high, so I would lower myself onto it, then jump from the wood pile to our deck, and go across ours and our neighbor's backyard to the road over. I would make my way to the street corner where one of my friends would pick me up. I did all this to just go bowling, lol, or to go see a movie with my friends. Sometimes we would just go to a friend's house and play Warcraft. It was all really innocent, honestly. One night I was at the bowling alley with a group of friends and I got a call. It was my mom calling. My heart dropped into my stomach. I picked up. She said Dad woke up and checked in on me, and I wasn't in my room. Where was I? Because she was coming to pick me up right now. I lied and said I was at a friend's house. I don't know why I lied about being at the bowling alley. I think because it was like 20 minutes out of town? I don't know. She said she was coming to get me. I begged one of my friends to drive me to where I told her I was. It was embarrassing, because my friends tried to understand, but they just couldn't. Why am I going running when my parents called? You're 19, not 12. Stuff along those lines went through their heads and they would say that to me. What they didn't know was that growing up in a foreign family, physical violence is very common. It's not their fault. I didn't talk about it, and honestly, I'm glad most of them have never experienced that sort of home life. So a friend dropped me off, and my mom was waiting and took me home. She was grilling me on where I had been and what I had been doing. Once we got home, my dad slapped me around, which was no big deal. But then he went to go get his belt and my mom stopped him, saying I had to work and go to school and it would be obvious I took a beating if I favored my back. I did have some bruises on my face, so I stayed away from my friends till it healed. Which was easy as my parents only let me out of the house for school or work after that. It used to be something I looked back on, now as an adult in my 30s, and laughed about. That time I got caught sneaking out, but rereading what I just wrote, wow, it just wasn't right. Being ashamed of my home life and keeping it secret from my friends. Being hit and controlled. It's crazy the kind of things you normalize, because you have to. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.